Hello and welcome back. My name is Cori Yoder of Coriander Quilts. Today we are answering a viewer question and we're chatting about the $5 August pattern of the month. I'm excited to chat with all of you again, so stick around. So first, let's go with that viewer question. This one comes to us from Peggy Hensman, and she says, what rulers do you use? Also, why do you prefer them versus creative grids? Thanks. So, this is a fun one. And I have a stack of rulers right here. A nice stack of rulers that we're gonna go through and chat just a little bit about. I want to start off by saying these rulers I have purchased over many years. I've been making quilts for, well, I started probably in the 90s. So, you know, it's been a little while and I have collected rulers over the years. I am not one to advise quilters to go out and buy the latest and greatest. And in fact, I would probably recommend that you kind of work with what you have. If you take quilting classes at a local quilt shop, sometimes you can try out rulers there and see what you think and determine for yourself what rulers you think are going to be beneficial to you. Just because I have a certain ruler or another quilter has a certain ruler doesn't mean that it's going to be a ruler that works well for you. So I'm going to kind of go through these rulers that I use and tell you why I like them and why I use them. So we're going to start with this long one here. This is the Olipfa Lip Edge ruler. It's a 36-inch long ruler and it is 4 inches wide. I've had this one for a long time. It's probably one of my older rulers. Actually, it might be the oldest, with the exception of my June Taylor ruler that you guys always hear me talk about here. These two are probably the oldest rulers that I have in this stack. This one I purchased because I like being able to, I have big cutting mats. Most of them are at least 36 inches across. And I like having a ruler that reaches the whole way across. And this one is great. The other thing that's really nice about this is it has this lip on the left side, which means that I can hook this onto the edge of my cutting mat and it locks into place, which is very nice that it doesn't move around. It also helps keep things straight when you're working with these longer cuts. So that's why I like this one for longer strips. Sometimes I will open my fabric up, not cut it folded. I will open it completely up, and this allows me to really hit a lot of fabric. I also like using this ruler for trimming the extra backing and batting off the edges of my quilts when I get them back from my quilter. So that's another great use for having a long ruler. So Olipfa Lip Edge ruler, 4 inches by 36. Use this one a lot. Oh, the other thing I like using it for is marking my quilt tops. If I'm doing straight line quilting on a larger project, it's really nice to have a nice long ruler that goes a good distance. So that's another reason I like this one. Okay, I'm not going to go into as much detail with all of the rulers that I have here, but this one is one that I use a lot for a lot of different things. My June Taylor perfect half square and quarter square triangle ruler. You guys hear me talk about this one probably far too much, but I love this specifically for quarter square triangles. That's where I use it most often. I don't as often use it for half square triangles, but it is set up very nicely to do both of those units in quilting. I just happen to like it very much for the quarter square triangles because of how the markings are. It allows you to be very accurate in trimming those down. So that's what I use this one for. Use this one a lot. Okay, now we're going to get into these are just kind of my standard rulers when I'm cutting units, cutting strips. This is another nice long one. These are Quilters Select rulers. Hopefully that's not too glary up there for you guys. Quilters Select rulers. The reason I like this brand is they have a wonderful non-stick surface on the back side of the rulers, and they grip fabric better than any other ruler I've tried. So I really like Quilters Select for that reason. They might not have as many different size options, but I don't tend to buy just tons of different sizes for my basic quilting. I'm talking cutting squares and rectangles, the units that you would need for a lot of different quilts. So I have found that they have the sizes that I need, that I enjoy using. I have this longer one. This is a 6 by 24. Works really nicely when I don't need this much length. I'll grab this one. And then I like having a smaller one. This is also 6 across and it is 12. So this works great for subcutting smaller sized pieces. So I would often use this one to cut the longer strips, and then when I'm subcutting, I would be using something like this. I have a couple other Quilter Select. I didn't bring all my sizes down, but I brought a couple. I like having, I'm gonna lump this in with some other rulers. I have ended up over the years purchasing a lot of different squares. So this is a 12.5. This one is, let's see, you are 8.5. I have, what are you, 10? 10.5. This one's 10.5. We've got 6.5. So you can see this one is 12, not 12.5, just 12. And then I have a really big one. This one is 14.5. And you might be wondering, why in the world do you have so many square rulers? And the reason I like having the square rulers is for cutting out like panels, or primarily panels, anything that I want to fussy cut that center. I like having a square ruler that allows me just to place it right where I want it, and then so easily cut all around the edges. You can make do with, you know, the longer rulers and maybe even overlapping rulers. Sometimes you can overlap rulers to get the size that you need, but I do it often enough that I like having a square in the size, the exact size that I need for fussy cutting out panels. I've had panels in a number of different fabric collections, and I've got another panel coming up that you guys are going to get to see very soon. So I just like having this. I have another ruler I just purchased a couple weeks ago that is another square, but it gives me multiple options in one square. And so I might have a new one that I like using. We'll have to see. I haven't tried it out yet, so we'll have to see how that one goes. But that's why I like all of these squares. The 6.5 I will also use for trimming my half square triangles. That's usually what I'm using for trimming half square triangles, is just a 6.5 inch square ruler. That works nicely for most of the sizes that I make. So this one gets more use probably than any of the other squares. The 12.5 inch one, I wouldn't necessarily say it needs to be this brand 12.5 inch square. I purchased this one in the early years of my quilt making just because I needed a 12.5 to square blocks. And so that is a square size that I do think is very nice to have. We have so many blocks and quilts that finish at 12 inches, so we're trimming to 12.5. So having a 12.5 inch square ruler is a nice thing to have in your rulers. Okay, so those are all the squares. A lot of those I feel would be probably unnecessary for the majority of quilters. I personally have found that for what I do, I really like having them, but that would not be something that I would recommend everybody go out and purchase all the square rulers, because you're not going to find yourself reaching for those very often. Another ruler that I like using is a 1/4 inch ruler, something like this. This is the OmniGrid 1/4 inch ruler from Fons and Porter. There are different brands very similar to this exact ruler, and I like using it for marking my sewing lines on the back of if you'd be doing the no waste 4 at a time flying geese units, I'd be marking my sewing lines with this, or half square triangles, I'd mark my sewing lines with this. So it's any time where you need to, if you want to mark those sewing lines on either side of your marked diagonal for those sorts of units, something like this is really nice. The last one I will say that I use pretty often is my Stripology ruler. This is, I think this is the biggest one, and it's so nice when you are cutting strips of fabric and you want to subcut down into smaller units. So if you are cutting lots of squares or lots of rectangles in various sizes, this ruler is really nice. I know a lot of you are familiar with this ruler already. If you're not, you can find great demonstrations on how to use this ruler, tutorials for this ruler here on YouTube. So you can search out the Stripology ruler. It comes in a few different sizes, some smaller. This is the one I use most often, and for cutting lots of squares or rectangles. Okay. That's kind of my roundup of rulers. I have a few others. I didn't bring down ones that I don't use as often. These are the ones that I would grab most often right here in this stack. And like I said, these big squares, don't get as much use, but for me, they are so nice to have. And now we are going to move on to our $5 pattern of the month. And I decided to offer my Jelly Sticks pattern. So this is a jelly roll friendly quilt. I've actually made this quilt twice. It's a lot of fun to make this one. It goes together very quickly. The first one I made was using Buttercup and Slate, which you see hanging right here. This is a 56 by 68 inch quilt, so just sort of a nice throw-sized quilt. You would need one jelly roll, a little bit of background fabric for the block centers, and then just your border and binding. So not a lot of supplies needed with this one. And this is the other Jelly Sticks quilt. You saw it here when I was talking about the rulers. I love this one. I think it's so pretty. The fabrics I used are actually vintage sheets that I collected over a number of years. And I really like that it looks so watercolory and it's just so pretty. I shared a video on this one when I was constructing it here on YouTube, so I will be sure and link that below. But it was so fun. Such a fun project. It's backed in Minky, so it's very soft and very snuggly, and I just really like the way this one turned out. I like them both. It's so interesting to me how different they look. Completely different looks between the two quilts. So Jelly Sticks, $5 pattern of the month, like I said, over in my Etsy shop. It's available in PDF or in paper copy, whichever is your preference. I have the Etsy shop linked in the description box below. And if you visit my blog today, I will mock up the quilt pattern using some fabric lines that are currently in quilt shops right now so that you can get an idea of what it would look like in some other fabrics. But a nice, simple, pretty quick quilt to piece, and I think it's just perfect for this back to school season. Can you believe we are already getting close to back to school season? This summer has zipped right along, but sometimes you want just a quick fall project. This would be really pretty in fall fabrics. I will make sure to mock up something fun in a fallish line so that you can see what it would look like if you wanted to do it in a fall fabric line. So be sure to check that out. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Also, if you want to drop in the comments your favorite quilting ruler, it's always nice to hear from other quilters a ruler that they reach for often. That's just nice to know the different options that we have. If you have a question that you would like featured in an upcoming video, you can leave that as well. Just write question in all caps before your question, and we will chat about that in a later video. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I will catch you again next time.